When it comes to small business, yes, people are putting so much effort into really making this stuff, and that doesn't knock at the corporate stuff because they're working their asses off too, but in a different way.
Yeah.
It depends on like what aligns with your values more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Roast. Today I'm joined by Ryan Miller. He's the founder of Blackbird Athletics.
What's up, guy? How's it going?
Yeah, we don't get much of a response on the Zoom call with the audience here. So, man, what's going on?
I had a pretty good day today. I was able to get a workout in with one of my friends and then go on a hike with my new puppy and my nieces. Back from that. So, yeah, it's been a good day so far. How about yourself?
Yep, pretty good. It's a day off for me. So, working on online stuff most of the day. That's kind of the majority of my days off. And then I have my daughter basically all day because when I'm off, my wife is in her coffee shop.
Okay.
And it's basically just daddy daycare the whole time. So busy, easy, and difficult at the same time.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
We were talking about it before. Yeah, it's a totally different lifestyle.
It is, man. So for people that don't know, I think a lot of the viewers that I have are probably not familiar with Blackbird Athletics. If you just let everybody know what you focus on, kind of give them a little insight into what it is you do.
Sure. So I started Blackbird Athletics last year, 2019. It's a fitness company. I do personal training. I have online programs. I've been a personal trainer for about 5 years. Was working at a big box gym and then decided to take my own road, and I started the company. I am trying to turn my company more of as multifaceted in terms of having a service as well as products. So that's a transition I'm trying to work on right now, is to get into product, because primarily I've just been working on personal training services, online training, coaching calls, mindset, behavior change. And that's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So so you said you've done that. You've been a personal trainer for 5 years and just a year in your own. I'm sure it's like night and day from working for a corporate brand into going to work for yourself.
Yeah, so it's night and day in the terms of you really do get to be your own boss, right? When you start your own business in general, you get to really make your brand what you want to make it, right? And so as opposed to me trying to fit my shape, into whatever shape of the company is, I get to be that shape, and that's a huge thing, just personally, growth-wise, as well as just productive-wise. It's a huge thing, and as you mentioned, night and day from what I was doing before. Super important to do the other thing, because then that allows me to know what I want, right?
Exactly.
And now I'm ready to continue with my brand and keep this going. What is it, June now? Yeah, June 28th last year is when I started my business. So just a few weeks away, 1 year in business. So it's been an awesome ride, a lot of ups and downs, and
Sure.
A lot of growth in that time period. I'm very thankful.
Yeah, I found that the hardest part about starting the business was actually getting the momentum to pull the trigger. It's I think I spent years. No, it seems like years just talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you pull the trigger on it, things don't work out at all the way you think they will, and then things fall into place that you never thought would.
That's so true. And I mean, I was always at my job being you know what, I can't do this forever. I never want to be in corporate forever. I go up here, I become the top level trainer over the years, and then I go into corporate or I start my own brand. I did a little map out, a little fan thing, timeline, and prepping for that was okay, I could either stick this out for 5 more years, or I could do this thing separate, completely different for 3 more years, and then maybe do this, and then or I can just start my shit now.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, see where I'm at. And that build up, right? It took me 3 years at that company to get to that point where I was like, you know what? Now it's, that build up, as you mentioned, is super real. That confidence to start it, just start it. And now I don't know what it's like for, in terms of like legalities to set up a business where you're at. But for me, I mean, I just use LegalZoom, and I was in New York, and, I set up my business, no bullshit. Like, I got some information in like 45 minutes. I put in the application, and then I called somebody on the phone, and then they finalized it. It was like, congratulations, you own a business, LLC. And I'm like, wait, what?
Wow, LLC over the phone.
Yeah.
45
Yeah. Well, I mean, they already had all the information, but like, that was it,
Wow.
And, I had the money, I set it up all then and there, and then it's been just growth since. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, it was not like that for me. So I live in a pretty small town. I think the county that I live in, I'm wanting to think there's 50,000 people in the county. I don't even know if that's accurate. I think that's too big. I know that the town right next to us has 6,000 people, and I think we have like 1,800 people in this little town. It's very small.
Very small town.
So, I work for the county. I know we talked about that.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, everybody knows everybody here, but everything, it's like Andy Griffith. Like, I mean, there was no one around to tell me how to open a business. The only other entrepreneurs that I really knew were my grandparents. Totally different business. And they set theirs up a long time ago. So I had nobody to like lean on. And I'm like, I guess I'll just walk into the county commissioner's office and just say, well, actually I went to City Hall and I'm like, I want to open a business. And they're like, okay, well, you don't do that here. I'm like, okay, well, where do I go? And they're like, you go to the commissioner's office. So I went there and they're like, okay, well, here's this piece of paper, write your projected earnings, write all, do all this stuff. And then they're like, do you already have your name secured? Like, do you already have a fictitious name registered? I'm like, no, how do I do that? Like, literally, like, I had no real way to, like, there was no guidelines. And actually, I'd like to do something in the future to help people with the legality side of it. Okay. And for us, we did it as a sole proprietorship initially because we used such a small area and we were like prepared for a long time. And then it was dead in the water for months. And then it was like a 2-week turnaround. Like, you guys have this space if you want to be open. So that was quickest. And then we're we're turning that as we speak. 45-minute LLC, that's pretty,
that's pretty much like what it was like, let's say, regardless, I got it in the same afternoon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I filled out that paperwork and it made it super simple, but I still had to do all the other stuff. I still had to go to the county clerk. I still had to go register that. In New York State, you actually have to publish your business in 2 real print newspaper articles. And you have to run for like 6 weeks or something like that, maybe 6 to 9 weeks, and in 2 separate newspapers. In the county that you're registering it in.
Wow.
Just because, so that way otherwise, I'm assuming it would just be very easy for you to kind of rip off the system, just say that you're making money and, you have a business with it. So it's kind of just like to make it real. Maybe that's New York City standards. So I did all that, still waited. But yeah, now we're rocking and rolling, still good. That it was simple, but there was a lot of learning to do. Just as you mentioned, like learning where to go, what to do, sole proprietorship versus LLC, what that means. Okay, well, when I went to go see my accountant, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking of doing a sole proprietorship. One of my other friends who is a financial advisor mentioned, oh yeah, do that. It helps with taxes. And he's like, well, yes, but you're not making anything right now. So maybe it's not like the best thing tax-wise, so it all just depends on the situation, depends on the business, what you're doing. Mine was a service versus products or food. So maybe that has a reflection. I remember talking to Tony about that. Tony Graziella. Sorry, we mentioned that before.
Right? We thinks that big time.
Yeah, we thinks that big time. No, Tony Ponte. And his setup for like tax wise starting his business was very different because he has food, a product, he has licenses, he has to do all kinds of things to start that, just as I'm assuming you did. Yeah, it's a crazy learning curve that just you're kind of slammed with, right? Just randomly.
Yeah, I mean it's out of the blue. I know, like, you know, we did a sole proprietorship. Basically, the LLC protects you from the liability of your company. You know, limited liability is like the whole thing. So, you know, someone could get like burned or whatever at your place, and they're protected. Our place is mainly to go. It's a small coffee shop, and then you know, I have a pretty decent insurance policy that's mandated because we're actually in a corporate hospital. So I was pretty much, it was like there's really not much of a scenario that I could like lose everything and be sued by something. You know, there's always like the fear of someone being burned by a coffee or whatever, but you know, we're pretty much in a good position to be able to do that for a little bit of time. Now that we're in the internet side of things and creating product, it's much different. The biggest hurdle that I've seen, and Tony probably knows about this, is like for our cold brew, for instance, if I want to carry it somewhere that's like corporate, that has like corporate mandated regulations on how they actually keep stuff, I've got to have like shelf life testing, number one, which takes, like, you literally give them one of your products, you pay, I believe it's like, I can't remember, it's like almost $1,000 per product, and it sits on the shelf until it goes bad, and then they let you know when it goes bad, and then you're good to go.
Wow.
And then another one is your nutrition labels. So thankfully, what I'm doing doesn't really have any ingredients other than coffee. So there's really not much, like, I don't have to have this big nutrition label with calories and everything, because it's calorie empty. There's no sugar, there's no sodium, there's nothing. It's just coffee. And you'll see that a lot with like bags of coffee. There's no nutrition label.
Yeah, it's just like
on that.
Marketing and then where it's from, which is super important. But I'd rather see that than, especially with a bag of coffee, like a nutrition label, you know?
Yeah. Well, and then the other one is UPC codes. So UPC code to scan, there's like a yearly fee it's a hefty yearly fee for a startup. Now, if you're like Coca-Cola or something like Starbucks, you're selling, you know, this doesn't matter. But I'm wanting to think it's like $245 a year, and it's like $885 a product to get a UPC code.
So that UPC code, break that down for me. What is that?
That's your barcode, your scan barcode.
Oh, so that's literally the scannable barcode. That's what that. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I think that's right, UPC. I don't think it's UCP. I think it's UPC. Okay. So, like, if you wanted to carry, like, if I wanted to put my product in 7-Eleven or something like that, I'd have to have shelf life testing and a UPC code. Now, I'm in a small area, so one of the good things is, like, I can have guys that aren't corporately owned, you know, carry stuff, markets and stuff. They don't have to do. Well, I don't know if they don't have to or if they don't. It's funny, actually. I'd have to ask them that. You know, but very different, man. It's a lot of stuff as to, you know, I think your business probably is like a weight would be lifted off, you know, because you can pretty much just sell service.
Well, yeah. So I can sell service, and I'm listening to that and I'm like, wow, that it's very different. You know, food and anything and falling in that category is super different. So yeah, like right now I started the business primarily as service, and I want to get into products. So service wise, like there's no like tax codes or anything like that. I just have to pay taxes on the business, right? On the products that I've sold or the services that I've sold throughout the year. But as you mentioned before, like sole proprietorship, you don't really have anything to worry about. You know, for me, right, I'm working with somebody's body. And this is like their personal space, their life. So like, God forbid I was to instruct them in something, and regardless if it's my fault or not, they get hurt, right? Now, whether it's negligence on my part or not, they get hurt and they sue me. My company could be dissolved, gone in a second. And so that was kind of like the reason for me starting like the LLC. But it also was not something that I was like super worried about. Like I'm confident in what I do, but it's also just the easiest for me because all I'm doing is services. Now, getting into products, it's simple, but it's also not. Like I have to be able to have those tax codes for products, tax it differently, have a separate accounting of it, which is something that I haven't learned formally. I went to school for business. I got marketing management bachelor's at Brew College in New York City, and I took accounting in college, but it's the basics, the stuff that you would do by hand, right? It wasn't anything that they didn't teach you how to use QuickBooks. They didn't teach you how to do anything actually, regardless to accounting. They kind of expect you to work for another company, be doing marketing for them, right?
Yeah.
Even then, like they teach you the most basic stuff. Very thankful, however, not super practical or applicable. That's why people get internships.
Yeah.
I'm essentially doing my internship right now. With all of this stuff. So it's a whole separate thing that I have to do and keep account of, which is very, like literally, it's fun because I can have somebody that shows me, but it's also like, it's a whole different animal. Before I just had to like do my taxes as one thing. Now I actually have to go ahead and file quarterly the second I start selling products.
Yeah.
Which is a huge business thing. It's there's a lot to learn. And it's just interesting. I find it super fun. It's like a game of chess, right? It's like,
yeah. I mean, I used to say like, how do people get in trouble with taxes? Now I know. I'm like,
yeah,
man,
now you know exactly,
because I have to pay monthly. I pay a state and a county tax monthly on top of, and it's not a lot. I mean, I think county is gets discounted if it's paid on time. There's an interest if it's paid late. State is you just pay a certain percentage. I don't remember right. I took 4.5%, 5.5% in Virginia. And I have that like added into, our, trying to think what you call that service. Basically our, whatever you call your system that you scan everything. I look like an idiot on here. Like we use Square. That's who we use to do our transactions.
So I know what you mean. It's like
I'm looking for
purchase service, like the card service, the reader. I use Stripe.
Stripe.
I use Stripe. I mean, that was just an option. I was looking at Square. Square is better if you have a location. For online stuff, Stripe was just my better option personally for what I needed.
Yeah, I don't use it for our website, and so that's another thing. I'd like to have them together. But, there's a lot of stuff. I don't think, there's a time and place to like make certain moves. The amount of like effort that it would take to redo all that.
Reintegrate.
Yeah. I need to pay to have that done. So I'm willing to, works currently how it is. I can use Square, for example. Well, I'll give you an example. The website provider I use actually I can take transactions on the app.
Wow. Okay.
Which I think is through Stripe. Now, Square, it sounds complicated, but basically I've got it's one business with two separate things going on.
Systems. Yeah.
A product line that I have separate with separate actual transactions, and then the coffee shop. So it's.
Yeah, but it's complicated, but that actually, so what I'm dealing with right now, that might make more sense. So you have two separate accountings of like, okay, this is what I'm making in the store versus this is what I'm making online. So when it comes time for tax season for you, it'll be super easy to be like, okay, these were things sold online versus this. You can really integrate that. For me right now, because I only have the one thing online, right? And then I have other things coming into account, maybe from like Venmo, which is a blessing because then you don't get, a percentage taken off of the credit card, right? Processing fee, right?
I mean, you're going to pay a fee. The banks want, I looked at using a bank. So I've got, obviously a business checking account. I use Wells Fargo. They want to bring in the specialist guy, and he comes in and they charge. I mean, it's like quite a bit of money to have it. Yeah. Whereas I mean, you're losing it either way. Those bank account versions are probably better if you're turning like 6 figures a month, as
Yeah,
opposed to
it
like,
makes more sense because then it's all centralized. Because then there's their bank accounts, then there's all like they can put everything together, which makes it super simple. But if you're just starting out, like your best bet might be using like one of those other services, right?
yeah,
And like just exactly what you're saying, like the key is to get everything all integrated, getting a system that works, right?
yeah,
And that is a process. It takes time. It takes money. It's and regardless of the business, and that's what I love about this conversation so far, and just us in general. Like we're in two totally different industries, right? We found out about each other through a common link, right?
yeah,
That was actually able to bridge that. Tony, he was a trainer. I knew him, and then he's going into coffee. So like, regardless of that, it's like similarities in the businesses that you start is. I find it so fun because you're able to
this
really
man.
have you just have a different understanding, a different type of view on how things go. Like you have a different appreciation for brands, other brands, regardless of what industry they're in. It's like you can see when people are hustling. I guess you get it.
Yeah, for sure. And I look at everything that way now. So like I can't look at anyone I used to watch or anything without thinking, well, how are they monetizing that? Wonder how they break that down. I wonder, you know, it basically
Like yeah.
it's like a problem now.
Like something that like I could have, is like what really is value. I guess that's kind of like the thing is like what is value? Is what they're selling just marketing or is it value? I think that's super important. That's the question that our consumers, our people, our customers are always looking at. Is this valuable? And when it comes to small business, yes, people are putting so much effort into really making this stuff. And that doesn't knock at the corporate stuff because they're working their asses off too, but in a different way.
Yeah.
It depends on like what aligns with your values more. At the end of the day, really, that's always what when you buy a brand, like you buy it not because, maybe it looks nice, but okay, why does it look nice? Because I value looking this kind of way. What does that bring to my life? Like those are the things subconscious, like literally, and it happens in an instant. When you go to like whatever clothing brand store and you say, I like this, that style represents a value of yours. And that in a split second, you are so able to acknowledge that. And you don't even think about it. It's just like, that looks good. Well, why does it really look good? And then you see other people wearing different things. You're like, nah. And you make judgments on those people, right?
Yeah.
I don't, we just don't really get along. And the biggest example is like, the preps versus the goths in high school, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just totally different things. It's all it is different, the most primitive version of like adult values, right? Trying to figure out what's important to you and whatnot.
Yeah, it is,
I don't know. I think that's super interesting.
It is. I mean, and it follows up to adults, and now they just do it in a different way. Now it's just vehicles, and now it's, it's interesting to me to like the study of people is the easiest way. Well, I don't know how to say this. Like paying attention to how people are and their decisions in their lives is the easiest way to really know about them. So a good example of that is like sales. Very easy to figure out. A lot of people think you have to find common ground, like, oh, this guy's wearing a fishing shirt. This will get them to buy. We'll talk about fishing, It's not really that, it's just more like you can almost assume based on how someone's dressed or you can almost assume, I wouldn't say that you can almost assume what kind of thinking they have, and it, what I'm saying? Like here, it's very easy because you have like a very split area where I am, where you have very like country people. You can pretty much bet like if that guy walked on the dealership, he was going to get a truck. You know what I'm saying? Or trying to think how to word this better than that.
I hear you. Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit. 1 second.
Did I cut out?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You're cutting out a little bit on my end. Yeah, am I cutting out on yours? I mean, I just don't want that to be an issue anymore.
I don't. I couldn't tell if you were cutting out because I was talking. So
All right.
we can snip a bit out of that. It's all good.
All right. Sorry about that, brother.
You're good, man.
Um, yeah, no, I understand what you mean, though. I understand what you mean, though. It's like, uh, you could, if so, like, if you see somebody wearing like oh man, what's the name of a snowboarding brand or a skiing brand, right?
Burton or
If you
something.
see somebody wearing, yeah, Burton or something like that, you know, like, okay, like they're into Burton. That means that they like to do this kind of stuff, or, you know, I mean, you just make those assumptions. You can almost assume, but like at the end of the day, you never really know until you talk to them, right?
Never
But,
really know.
you know, what'd you say?
Yeah, I said you're right. You never really know.
Well, you never really know. I mean, you could wear a brand. I wear stuff all the time. Like there was, it was super off brand. This was a while ago. So now I love techno. I love EDM. I love music like that kind of stuff. But I also like to listen to oldies. I love me some AC/DC, some Van Halen. I love listening to random stuff. Give me some reggae. Give me my Spanish music. I love all that, right? But then randomly, I went to Warped Tour with some of my friends, like a few, and then I was like in a mosh pit. And I posted that on my story, and everybody's like,
What's he doing there?
what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Yeah, like everyone's like, are you okay? Like, I see people like moshing, and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of like, you know, you never really know. But at the end of the day, you can always like, the point is like when you associate yourself with a brand, regardless of the industry, you're choosing it because it aligns with your values. And I think that that's a super important part of starting your business. And owning a business is like, what are your values? Those things have to be on lock. Yes, you can figure them out along the way and fine tune them and, you know, really solidify your foundation, which is what I've been doing over this quarantine. Is like coming back home and be like, okay, I got all this stuff down. Like, you know, it's kind of like you build the scaffolding and then you
Yeah.
build all the rest of the stuff coming up and you really make it solid. So that's like those values are going to be what drives your business every step of the way. And they can change, they can grow, they can modify, they can evolve. However, like you got to have that understanding of like what that means, like what that is, what you want people to associate with your brand, and then you live it. You can't just say it, you got to live it, what that
Yeah.
means. And that's why I think that small business is so important and so crucial, because those people have to do that. A lot of those big brands have been around for such a long time, and it's hard. You can't compare yourself to a large brand
No.
because they've had their impact on the culture of the society that they're in for years. Like you can't be like, okay, I want to be like them, dude. It's not that simple. There's more
No.
layers to it.
That's
And that's all stuff that you figure out once you start actually doing the work.
yeah. I found that our cold brew kits, I was inspired originally, like, hey, that's a great idea, by Starbucks. They make a cold brew. It's called pitcher packs. That's what they sell. And I'm like, I can do that. Like, that's a great idea. Like, I think there's not a lot of that in the market. There's two brands that do it. It's a great way for us to do it. And in my mind, I'm like, we've got to be cheaper and better. Okay, well, we can't be cheaper, because what I realized was that Starbucks owns coffee farms. They control the logistics completely. They literally buy in such massive bulk that they have prices that I'll never get to see. And I don't want to talk bad about a brand that I don't really know about, but I would be willing to bet that their focus on where their stuff comes from is more centered around profit than it is. I wouldn't want to jump to say quality, but then about like where it comes from. So like my wife's from Mexico, and we were going to have a Mexican coffee. That was our original idea. Well, quickly we realized like we need a roaster, and that kind of got pushed aside a little bit, and we used Bolivian in our coffee shop, and we love it. It tastes awesome. The customers love it. The guy that we get it from does an awesome job. I got to get some tomorrow. But we still wanted to do the Mexican coffee. So that's what we did when we did this product. We went and found that. And what I realized really quickly is like I got coffee from this area in Mexico, right? From Chiapas, Mexico. You get it here, it's green, you roast it. I'm not even counting like my hours into the price. Like there's not even labor associated with it. If I had to put labor on the stuff and incorporate the cost that I paid for shipping, gosh, I'd have to charge a lot more. I mean, literally mine's twice as expensive, essentially, and I sell products. But essentially what my point is these big businesses are untouchable in what they're able to do as far as how quick they can do things and how cheap they can do things. Do you hear me good on your end? It kind of glitched out for me.
Yeah, I hear.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of glitched out a little bit, but I got the gist of what you're saying. Getting that coffee, like wanting to get it from a certain place and not even counting, the labor. And you're right, though. I mean, like those companies, they do go off profit. And, in business school, that's what they teach you. It's profit first. They teach you all this kind of stuff, what to kind of put into it. They don't actually teach you like how to associate like labor or how to start your own business, right? They had entrepreneurship courses where they covered, like concepts, and that's always what college is anyway. You actually have to put, figure yourself, and this anyway is going to give you a magic pill, right? But I can imagine that the quality of the coffee that you're bringing to the table literally is overall better than that of a chain, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it just has to be, the scale that is just. And I remember listening to. Sorry, what were you saying?
I think we're just operating on two different speeds a little bit. Our connection's just a little bit slow. I just agreed. That's all. You can keep going.
Yeah, man. And I was remembering like your conversation with Tony, and you mentioned how oh man, just lost me. The idea just lost me.
About sourcing coffee from.
Yeah, like sourcing coffee from different places. It's just the quality is just not the same. It can't be the same. You know? You guys are literally taking the green beans from the place, bringing it over here, roasting it, perfecting it. I've seen Tony's process, like those machines, the roasting machines, where you like adjust the temperature, and then like as it roasts, then maybe you cut the temperature, and that gives it a different flavor profile.
It's complicated. It's hard.
Complicated. It's science, but that's what every single thing is like, people who are breaking the mold. It's always going to be different, new, more exciting, better quality than it is going to be in larger companies who are trying to streamline their products. And like, if I remember walking into a Starbucks like cafe, and this was in like by Washington Square Park in Manhattan, right? And it was a Starbucks, and they had a map of all the places that they source their coffee from. And I was thinking of that, and that's what reminded me. In your conversation with Tony, you mentioned that sometimes those beans are mixed together from different places.
Yeah.
So like you'd have different beans from different places, and then they roast it just however they roast it, and whatever comes out of the flavor is like whatever comes out. Maybe they have done that in the past, where they kind of like nitpick and do that whole roasting process. But most of the time, most likely, they're probably not going to that scale. And I have no idea. So like that's just what I could expect or see from them. That's what I get when I see those coffee places, because honestly, bro, Starbucks is not good.
I mean, it's
Starbucks is not good. It's very bitter. It's not. There's no real profile to it. The cold brew just gets me going, so I'll drink a cold brew from there if I need to go on to something. But don't give me a Pike's roast or whatever. Like, I don't like it.
I'll tell you right now.
It's just my personal preference.
Buying the bags exposes a little bit. Buying it in Starbucks, when you get a drink there, you're masked by the experience a little bit. When you get it in just a bag, you're getting an $8 bag of coffee. There's a roasting place 30 minutes from here, Lexington Coffee Roasters. the top 12 roasters in the country. I don't know if they're consistently there, if they were just there once. It's like $26 a bag, so you're talking, there's leaps and bounds difference. And actually a good point that you made was they have a map of like where all their coffee comes from. Well, I'd be willing to bet that that's actually just good marketing, because that probably comes from all those places into a bag.
Yeah.
And basically they make it look like it is scheduled, or not scheduled, but that it's like this one comes from here and this one, and maybe it does. I'm kind of reaching a little bit, but
yeah, me too. But that's true though. So they have coffees where they have specifically from different
they
places.
do.
And then only at certain select coffee shops do they have like a barista who's going to maybe have exactly those beans, but you never know. I mean, I don't know. It's just
and I wouldn't want to sit here and say that's what they do, and I'm
I mean, but you never know. I mean, the point is that, and I think what we're trying to make at is that we're going back to like the whole value conversation of like, okay, this is easy. So is that something that you value, or do you actually value the taste of coffee? And that's how you're going to determine, or like my business, like what do my clients value for themselves in their life? What do they want to change? Is it just their physical fitness, or is it their mental health, or is it their relationships, or is it their conversations with themselves in here, right? Like, I have to figure that out, and what what's true to me, but also be flexible. And this, you have to, when you own a business, you are catering to your customers, right? So how can you do that? That's in alignment with yourself.
Yeah.
That's also in alignment with what your clients, customers, patrons, supporters want. And those are all questions that you got to think of, right? I feel like, you have to think of those things when you're starting your own business, or even when you're trying to go for a job. And I think like that is something that I never learned. I was never taught.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, like I want to work here. Why? Because I want to make $20 an hour. And then you get there and you're like, fuck.
Oh, I've never had a job that I was like, man, I love this,
Yeah, no, it's like, but now do you have that conversation with yourself and your wife and you're like, I love this shit?
Yeah. And then, like I said, we have two different, I think she loves the coffee shop, right? And we could like sell dog treats the same way. And I love coffee. Like I'm a big coffee drinker. It's not like I just got into something random. Like I love coffee. But I like the process. And I don't want to sound like, what a lot of people say, that they just love the grind. It's not really the grind. It's just like, I love taking something out of nothing, and I really enjoy, like I romanticize about this in my head. Like I know where we're going to go. I like to say that, and I believe it. Like I know where we're going to be, if it's by this vehicle or by a vehicle I haven't seen yet, you know what I mean? But I want to look back and be like, man, that was cool. I think that's what I really enjoy about it is, and you probably know, like you're surrounded by people that are always like either giving you tips and they have no idea what they're talking about, or the flip of that, where they're just like, oh man, I'm sure you are hurting right now, or yeah, it's a horrible time to start a business, or blah, 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 or you can't make money on the internet, or
yeah, man.
I like that part of it.
I hear you. I've had somebody who say like, I was like, I'm excited. I'm going to be on a podcast. And they're like, what, with like 6 followers? And I'm like, all right, bye. Like, you have kind of those things going on where it's a little, where the grind of it is overlooked. People just want to see that end result. And I think that's just what you have to kind of filter out.
What do you expect? We're going to be on Rogan tonight? It's like,
I mean, that would be awesome.
That would be awesome, but we'd probably freeze up. I don't know if I'd freeze up, but I probably would. I'd be mush mouth. Yeah. No, I've thought about that. I'm like, I'll look back at the plays and everything, and I'm like, if I accumulate all the plays, like it's not a lot, but you also got to remember, like, I don't think a lot of people know this either. For me, this isn't just like a business side of things. Number one, it's documenting stages of this. This is for me. At the same time, if I can gain people that want to listen. That's a plus. It's also about building relationships with people that are like-minded. I would rather talk to 50 people, a month like this with no viewers than talk to these people saying that all day long.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about who you surround yourself with and what you really are intaking. Like, I love conversations like this. I love having deeper conversations, talking about stuff that people don't normally talk about. Fuck the weather. Dude, fuck the weather. I don't care about it.
Yeah.
What's going on this weekend? What's going on? Who did what? I do not care. Let's talk about what's actually going on with you. Like, let's cross those weird barriers, having those uncomfortable conversations, the hard conversations, maybe stuff that you haven't talked about yet. Like, that's kind of like, yeah, that's what I love, right? And I love that you mentioned that you love the process of it, because that's what I love as well. I love the process of these things. I love the coaching. I love the talking part, the people piece, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned your wife loves the shop piece, right? But for your business, I imagine that is an amazing compliment. You have your wife who loves to run the shop while you can do the administrative / background stuff, like actually roasting the coffee and all of this, like that process. You getting to do this podcast to promote your brand, crucial, super crucial. And you get to focus on this because you also have your ride or die next to you, getting the coffee shop. Like,
if I do it all,
Yeah, and it's hard to do it all. You can't. And that's the other part too. If you're starting a business, you cannot do it all by yourself. No matter what anybody says, no matter what Instagram person said that you got to do this, get the grind, make it hustle, do everything by yourself. I promise you will not be able to do it by yourself.
Well, and you never want to actually do it. Like, you're inside of your head, you don't want to do it ever. Yeah. I've noticed that. It's like you fantasize all this stuff, and then when it comes to do it, like, oh well. It's
well,
like,
man, I can't really. Something comes away.
I'm like 6:30. I'm gonna talk to Ron. Okay, 6:30. It's getting close. I'm like, dang, man, like I gotta do this and that, and then it's like that. And so maybe you could do it another day. Maybe you could. It's like, no, dude. Like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to do it. I love doing podcasts. I always talk how much I love doing it, because it's really, one of the things that I enjoy to watch, I enjoy to listen, I enjoy to do. And then when you do it, you feel good. It's like working out, and we can kind of bridge the gap here a little bit. It's the same thing. You never want to do it, ever. I mean, you'll want to do it, but while you're doing it, you'll hit a point where you don't want to do it anymore, right? I mean, I love working out until I'm like halfway through dumbbell snatches, and then I'm like,
there's always something
I could probably call it.
That's that growth piece. It's like pushing yourself past the limit, right? And I think like what you're trying to get at before, and like this is just my interpretation of it, is like, you're always going to get in your own way. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Like, clearly, we had this appointment scheduled. We want to do this. I wanted to do this. And I'm like, but then there's all these other things that come up. The point of it is that if you were just to go onto the podcast by yourself and do a solo cast, maybe you would have pushed it on. But like, the fact of the matter is like, if you want to get things done, you have to collaborate with other people. And same thing goes with working out. You know what I mean? Like, and this goes for me as a coach, I can write my own program. I know how to write my own program. I've done it. I've stuck to it. I've lost weight. I've done that. But it doesn't keep me going. If I'm just a solo show trying to run this, trying to literally create this program, like, if I'm not collaborating with another coach to help me get better, like, I'm really not going to do it, just because I give myself the benefit of the doubt. And I'm like, I'll just do this again. Oh, yeah, I'll do that again. Oh, maybe just whatever. And like, that's so normal and that's so natural. But like, how good does it feel to work and collaborate with other people on a regular basis? Like,
it feels awesome. And like, I don't want to get too far away from what you said earlier about like a small following and like looking back at the glory days kind of thing. But I did want to bring up an example, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. I know you know who Gary Vee is. Yes. I think everybody in our age group in this wanting to start their own thing knows who that guy is. He did Wine Library first, and I love seeing like the first couple episodes of that.
Yeah, you're like,
it's full of views now, of course it is, right? But like, if you ever heard him say, I don't think he had a listener or a viewer until like more than 100 episodes in.
Yeah.
That's cool to look back and be like, damn, that he made 50 G's a year back then. That's crazy. He's got like 200 million now. Wasn't that long ago,
You get to document it. I think that's the important part.
You get to document it.
You get to document it with your podcast. And so like I've wanted to do a podcast as well. And I started doing this series on IG Live.
I've seen that. That's awesome.
Yeah, on IG Live with my friend Haley, at Habitually Haley on Instagram. Follow her. She's a gem. She and I do Coach's Coffee Convos. And so we'll have Tony's Coffee. He sponsors us. And we'll sit there and just have coaching conversations talking about different aspects of fitness, health, whatnot. And, we look back at it and we're like, wow, this is so cool because we get to really look back at what we've learned. But we can teach people, and it's documented to a degree. We had some hiccups in the beginning trying to figure it out, learning curve always. And that's part of it. We get to look back at those episodes where we were able to record and be like, damn, now that's what we've learned over the years. We started off working together at the same gym. That's how we know each other. And that documentation process is huge. And I think that's why YouTube is so awesome, because you get to see how far back, or if you have a podcast, you get to see how far back, where you started from, who you're talking to now, the conversations you're having now versus what the conversation was like back then. And it goes with journaling as well. And I had this realization. I think we talked about this in like a previous phone call, where like, if you're a big part to growth is like documenting it. So like right now, you have this podcast. That's a video and audio way for you to look back and journal. But like if that's something that seems too out of the reach for you, or maybe that's just not an industry you're interested in, like grab a journal. Like I feel like every business owner should have a journal and write down their thoughts on whenever they get the chance. It doesn't have to be always consistent, but if you write down something today and then maybe you write something again in 2 weeks, when you look back at it, or if you look back at it in like a year's time, you'll be like, damn, that's the same time period, right?
Yeah.
And like, what was my mindset then versus what is it now? And I had that realization as like a coach. I was like writing a bunch of stuff down, and I've been doing a lot of work on myself with self-growth, personal growth to be able to solidify my values as I've been talking about, right? And I looked back in this journal entry, and I thought I was so positive, and I thought I was so good, and like I was like, damn, like back then, right? Like, I'm doing so much, and I look now, and I'm like, I don't even recognize this cat. Like, who is this guy? Who is this person that I'm reading? Like, I literally didn't recognize myself because of the way that my entire perception has shifted. And that's how you know growth has happened. That's how you know change has happened. And so it doesn't matter if you're a business owner, if you're a client, if you're just getting into fitness and you're working out and you don't want to do it that day. If you write it down and then look back in 6 months from now being like, damn, I didn't want to do those dumbbell snatches. Bro, I can do kettlebell snatches with probably about even more, like maybe 5-6 more kilos. You look back and you're like, wow, I was complaining about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it happens quick. It takes a long time, but it happens fast.
Oh yeah.
And, this is growth for me, right? Like I did a podcast called The Safira Effect before this. I had no idea. It was a solo cast, every single episode. Totally random. I thought I was just heavily influenced by other people. Even the first episodes of this podcast, which is not that many ago. I mean, I don't do this every single week, which I want to. As this continues, I'd like to, have enough guests and everything, but to have a guest for the first time, like, that I didn't know was such a huge leap for me. That was like 1 million followers or something, it was like bridging the gap.
Accomplishment. That's the thing, like celebrate these wins, man. Like all of these wins, doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter if that first follower, boom, if it's that 6th follower, boom.
Yeah.
Dude, that is fantastic. Some people don't get that opportunity though, There's some people who don't get that opportunity. When you work for a business and work for a company, you're on your own thing and you are grinding and you are making better for yourself. You're making more money. You're rising through the ranks. You're putting in that work and you deserve every bit of credit for that. And some people don't get a chance to reflect on it because it's not their own per se.
Yeah.
It's more like an obligation. Okay, I'm hired by this company, so I have to do this. But like they might celebrate a promotion. Like, hey, I got a promotion. But like what about all that other stuff that they don't like? That's huge work for them. You know what I mean? I think that there's a gap there in terms of like the mindset, right? Between a bunch of individuals is like, you have to appreciate those things. Like if you went to work that day, you work for this huge company, you're in their, I don't know, their IT team, and you were able to figure out how to prevent failures in like the circuit of like whatever, you know what I mean? Like breaking down the connection on a regular basis. Like, dude, you figured out that and you were able to, like, that's huge. You might as well have started your own business then. You know what I mean? But people don't get to see that. They're like, that's just, oh, that's part of the job. You know, like just down.
I'm like that. I'm jaded big time when it's.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I did that shit. I just did that. You mean I just did that? Yes, I just did that. And you write that. If you write that down and you look back and be like, wow, back then I was just fixing circuit breakers and making sure that my company didn't have breakdowns. Guess what? Now I'm actually writing software and copy for the entire whatever, this whole website. Like,
yeah,
I want to bridge that gap because like, yeah, starting your own business is cool, but it's not for everybody. Some people have to do that. But like the mindset stays the same. And that's what a huge part of my business is like the mindset, that growth mindset. If you're just going into the trenches every single day and you're not getting anything out of it and you're stuck and you're just kind of like rolling around in the ditch, but you're never coming out of it, like that's not growth. That's complacency. And that is you holding yourself back. And so whenever I look at another person, whenever I talk to somebody, I see potential because I know that it's there. It's just you have to unlock it. You have to figure out what's important to you. And so I've been on this huge journey of like learning of how behavior change and coaching and motivational interviewing to try to unlock those pieces of different people in my clients, right? Because that's what's really important. I've seen that that's really important. It's been what's important for me, and it's what's important for every successful person. And a lot of these people are more successful than I am in terms of monetary wise, right? A lot of my clients, they make more than me, right? Now, how am I going to help them grow more in their life? Just physically, or am I going to help them make more so that way they can be happier? Or how can I make them become aware that their time is just as valuable as their work time? And that's something that's a question I've been battling with. Because people are so trapped in that mentality of like, money is the only way I'm going to be happy versus what you're doing on a regular basis is what's really going to make you happy, you know?
Yeah.
I think that we all have an opportunity every day to explore that realm of possibility. And if you don't, that is okay because nobody's perfect and nobody really knows what that is anyway. Like my idea of that is different than your idea of that. Whoever's listening to this right now probably had something come up in their mind where they're like, I will never know what that's like, what thing is going on in there. But like that opportunity for them, whatever that is what I strive to bring out of people. And so I think that's really what I've been working on as my brand. And that's a hard thing to do, right?
It's real tough. I mean,
yeah, it's a hard thing to do, but I will stand by it. But like that's the thing, is because it's so individual. The whole human experience is individual anyway. I mean, like,
for sure, man.
Like whenever you drive down the road, you see that tree, see this tree, this tree, you pass that car, that person is an entirely different world. Like it's crazy. I think about that all the time. Like people's lives are so different and you cross paths with people all the time. It's like so weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I'll tell you what was the first bit, I'm, like I said, from a very small town. So when we were in New York, there was a moment where I was like watching these guys. I don't remember what they were doing exactly, but they were putting ladders up against scaffolding and like they were working on something. And I'm like, here we are on our honeymoon. And these dudes are like carrying like steel ladders through Manhattan, just like about to like tighten some screw on something that's been messed up for 2 weeks. And then like my brain starts like going down the rabbit hole of like what they're working on. When did they find out about, like there's so much info going on all the time for every single person that you don't like. people like to throw around the word infinity like they understand it. Just think about, okay, just think about infinity. Think about it. If you're in a dollar store and there's 20 people in there and how much is going on there. And then you think about every product that, like, yeah, that's so with what you're doing and you're trying to figure out that basically the individuality of every single person to get them to come out of their shell, to find out what makes them tick. I mean, that's pretty cool. And it's complicated. It's like, we think we have it broke down. Like when I run ads, I can like select your interest, your age, how much money you make. I can all that stuff, and still not know anything about them.
No, it's true. I mean, so when I run my ads on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, right? It's the same thing. You choose your audience, and so if you guys are business owners that are listening in or not, or people who are customers, we get to choose who goes and what, or you can just say auto-populate by your followers or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it just depends on what you're trying to go for. So now I like have to make a choice of like, okay, who do I want to market to this week? So I have like 5 different categories of people. Like, okay, this post might be more relevant to this kind of person. So again, it's like always trying to find something that maybe grabs the attention of somebody else, right? Or a different type of demographic. And that's just the background things. But it's a challenging thing to do. But that's why the importance of conversation, talking, meeting with people, in-person conversations whenever possible is like super important, because you don't get to have those things just in a message or a text message, or I can find a lot about a person on a phone call, with no voice. You know what I mean? Like, when you and me had our first conversation, we were like, yo, this is awesome. Like, we're so stoked. This is going to be so much fun. And that was just from a phone call. We didn't see each other's face at all until now.
I like that because, I don't like to look too much. Like, because you literally create like a false premise of who
create a narrative in your own head about what this person is instead of having a genuine conversation with them. Like, get away from being comfortable. Get away with like, okay, I know what to expect. I'm expecting this. I want to talk about this. Like, no thanks.
What's crazy is and then all of a sudden you realize like, oh, like people don't think what I think they think about me. Like all the time I'm thinking like they probably think like, Sean, like he's a pipe dream, he's always working on something. But to someone else, they might think I have it all figured out. Like, but they have no idea. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's very weird. All of a sudden, it's almost like it takes the weight off, man, because nobody knows what's going on ever.
Yeah, nobody knows what's going on, but you get a chance every single interaction with somebody to figure it out. Figure it out for yourself. And then in that process, like, I think if you're more accepting of the process of it, then that makes you what people determine as like likable, right? Or right? Because then you're more carefree on a deep level, right? Like there's the laid back, chill dude, right? But like when you have an awesome conversation with somebody and you get to figure out about them, that's because they're being the most comfortable with them, authentic, genuine, real, whatever you want to call it. That's where you get to be like, okay, I can feel a certain way about this person, judgment based on this. They're not trying to do anything weird. They're being them. And I think that's crucial. But there's a lot of people who don't put that out there because they're scared of something, whatever it is. Fear drives a lot of people.
That's why I like the phone call before I do the podcast or anything, just because it gives you some commonality, and it basically it allows us to kind of already have a narrative, which actually is funny for this because I think we talked for over an hour.
Yeah.
We barely talked about any of this stuff. We talked about working out the whole time.
Completely different conversations. Yeah. I think that's awesome, man. I mean, it just shows that not everybody is a square. Exactly. Not every other person is a circle. Like everybody is, they're going through their own things. They're having their own world, right? And I just want to touch base on this because it was awesome. Now you mentioned that you kind of had this thing of like the first time is like when you're on your honeymoon in New York City and you see this guy going to this ladder, and you're like, damn, like that's crazy because we're in a completely different situation right now. me, similar, like I've always been drawn to the city. I grew up going down there. My father worked down in the city. So I was like, naturally, like, I want to move down there. Like, why not? Right. I was in a small town too, grew up. I don't know if it's as small as yours or maybe it's about the same, but we, you know, it's very small. It's very closed-minded. You have a bunch of different people that are also the same. And so I was like, let me get out of this. Let me go down to New York City. And I remember when I was first looking for apartments and I was driving down with my sister's fiance at the time. And he was helping me look for places. And like, as we're driving across the George Washington Bridge, and I'm looking at all of these skyscrapers, these buildings, and they all have little lights in them. All of the windows have little lights. And I like remember sitting there being like, this is so crazy because each window is somebody else's life that I have no idea what's going on. They could be going through whatever, anything, infinite amount of anything. And like,
it's just, I just like imagine coming out of an apartment, like, ooh, all the way down into a taxi. There's you, like,
and I'm just like, and exactly, there's me in this freaking car driving through. This person's upset because of whatever reason, or this person's happy because they just hit the jackpot. And I'm sitting here like, like like I'm having like a huge growth moment, right? And somebody else is just like, man, I just smoked this blunt and I'm like about to pass out. Like it could be anything. Right?
Chinese here yet? You know, like
yeah, exactly. It's like, is my food here? Where's the pizza? You know, like, and every single window, I'm sitting here being like, wow, that is the coolest thing. And like, what's going on there? How do I get to know them? And that was a very like,
that's a cool motivation.
Yeah,
how
that
do you
was a huge thing for me back then. Like that was before I was even like a trainer. Like I just wanted to move down to the city and go to school. I don't even know what I was going to do. I didn't get an apartment then. I actually stayed at home for a little bit, and then I got an apartment closer to the city, but not in the city. And then I moved back home, and then I moved down to the city for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. And then I moved home, and because of COVID and everything like that, and now my world's entirely different, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's you said because of COVID, now, there's like there's a church about 45 minutes away from my hometown that's had like 28 cases come out of it, which is like, whoa, because this whole time, I think there's been 13 cases in my county the whole time. So very different here, in my line of work, I have to work still. I have not been able to, there was no quarantine. I actually just saw like an uncle the other day and he's like, yeah, I go back to work tomorrow. And I'm like, dang, he's been off the whole time working from home. Like it blows my mind, I'll even watch TV. You were talking about like other people's lives. I was watching TV at work because I don't have cable TV at home. No use for that. But at work, they do have cable TV. And it's funny because all these people are doing Zoom calls like me and you. And we're really on Zoom because we're far apart. But like they're like talking to each other, like they work in the same building, they're all on Zoom calls and they're all in their like 10,000 square foot house. And I'm like, man, like those people are actually under quarantine. Mm-hmm. Very weird for me because, I'm like, drove to work today.
Yeah.
I went in the store today. So very different.
It's very different. I mean, so like I moved back home because my lease was up, but also because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, so now there's COVID. I can't find another place. No places are renting. Everyone's home. Very few people.
Bad time. Yeah.
Very few people are moving. So there's not as many apartments. If there are, they're super expensive. Well, New York City is super expensive anyway.
Yeah.
But like, so then I was like, let me move home. And then now my sister, she's a nurse. So she's doing her thing. She goes and she's been working this whole time. I'm lucky enough to, I got furloughed from my one job. I was working part-time at a physical therapist office as an assistant to the therapist there. And now I'm doing yard work and labor work for this older gentleman in my town, staying away, but I'm just doing labor work, something completely different. Before I was like doing, it's like, I guess you could say it's like physical work, but it's really more so, what's the word I'm looking for? kind of like a mental job, right? Where you have to know things versus like actual labor. Like I've shown it on my, like my personal Instagram story. Like I've moved so many rocks and stones to make stone walls, dirt, piles of this, piles of that. I've been reworking this entire dude's yard this whole last month. And that's just because it's, that's what's available right now. But I don't know, it's just crazy how things change, but you have to be able to adapt. And I think that there was a time, there was a time where this would have been devastating to me.
Yeah.
This would have been devastating to me. Like, man, I got let go from my job. What am I going to do? I don't know if I can't train people online. I have to be in a gym. Like, what am I going to do? And then I'll stay there. Yeah. It's taken a lot of digging, a lot of therapy to like get that stuff out of the way to be able to accommodate certain things. Right now I'm doing the best that I've ever been, mentally, physically, almost financially, like it's just, I feel like your scenarios in life are always going to change. The one thing that's going to stay constant is you, yourself, your mindset, what you're doing in here, those activities that you're doing in here. That's the constant. And that's where the sanity, right? The sanity comes in. Like, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have a constant in your life and something's always changing, you're always acting out of fear. So, like, if we want to get, like, physical, like, science, like, you're acting out of like the stem of your brain, like the fight or flight response. And then it's proven that you're not going to be able to make cohesive decisions, like actual good decisions based out of when this is primarily active. So like, it's just, that's literally the science. It just does not happen. You're acting like every single decision, every single conversation you have with somebody, if you're acting from here and you haven't taken a second to like take care of your body, to feel okay, to feel safe internally on a subconscious level, on a physical, deep, instinctual level, right?
Yeah.
And this conversation that you and me just had would have been entirely different. I would have thought, and you can't even begin to think of what it would be. It could have been, you can't even say like, oh, well, maybe I would have been more defensive. No, you don't even know. That's the thing, is you don't even know what the conversation with that person would have been like.
Yeah, it's a cerebral conversation for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's where, a lot of this stuff comes into play. I mean, that's just like, I go into stuff like this. This is the kind of shit that I love to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's good, I mean, that's what, for the viewers, like before we went live, I was like, I don't want to have a strict thing to go by. Number one, because it's not natural. I even feel funny like saying, "What's up, everybody?"
Yeah.
And I need to do that. I think I need to do that. It's like that's definitely a cerebral thing. I should probably let it roll off a little bit, but it just goes where the conversation should go, and then it also leaves for opportunity for the future. So like me and you could pick up on another at another time and have another conversation. I talked to Tony about doing some Instagram live videos like you're doing with what's her name again?
Haley.
We'll put her at as well, since you shouted her out.
Yeah. Haley.
It'll be there somewhere. I think more like on your side, if I'm correct. Yeah, I mean, it just, it follows the natural path it should. It's easy to, I used to think when I'd watch a podcast, I'm like, man, how did they talk for that long? And then, it's very easy to do. Like when you get into a good conversation, it just keeps rolling. I used to always think like, how do they keep coming up? How do they keep it so sharp? You'll hear somebody that's really smart about one particular subject, they'll just keep rolling. And it's like, oh, there's good tactics to conversations, and there's letting people speak as one. If I keep trying to like the whole time, this doesn't work. And it won't work because I wasn't paying attention if I'm doing that.
Yeah, it's like you're listening to answer instead of listening to listen. all super important stuff. And I want to take a second to bring it back into like the whole concept. I think what we really started talking about at the beginning is like starting a business and being a business owner, because that's our common ground, right?
Yeah.
So like that point right there that you just made of like, okay, I need to listen instead of actually listening to try to answer, is like probably one of the top 10 best advice tips for anybody who's starting their own business. Because if you're just like listening to answer, like, hey, like I would love some feedback on this, which I've been guilty of. And that's the thing. I've been guilty of like, hey, I would love some feedback on this. And I've just been waiting for them to kind of say something that I've been already thinking about. And it doesn't even mean like I'm doing it like maliciously or like deviously, like, oh, I just want to get confirmation bias, which sometimes I've done. It's like a subconscious thing you don't realize, but like taking a second to like hear what you're saying and then bring it into like really absorb it and then be like, oh, okay, gotcha. All right, this is what we're talking about.
And like 80% of people's daily conversations are just that. It's literally like a spitting contest. You know, it's like, oh, what did he? Oh, like his knee hurts. Well, let me tell you about my shoulder. You know, or wait a second, hold on. Oh, yeah, I'm waiting. I'm looking for my exit ramp here or the entrance ramp to get into this conversation. Literally, you can watch people when you step back from conversations. You can literally watch people. You can look at them and see their, they want to get into that, and you got to like get away from that a little bit because. I mean, if I wanted to sit here and, it's not a conversation without both of us speaking, but it's also not a solo cast, And then what did I gather from this if I'm too busy, trying to say what I want to say? And like you said with business, a lot of the people that I've met so far have either taught me something and I might not realize it in the moment, or there's been a connection that has come out of that, like this. The guy that sold me my coffee was my first huge connection because I let him talk and I let him say what he wanted to say, and he ended up hooking me up with equipment and a person that had more equipment. And you've got to learn to bite your tongue and listen.
Yeah, and that's hard for a lot of people. I love that story how you mentioned. And what you said before, you were like, you might either made a connection or they gave you an idea or you learned something that you didn't even know you learned right then and there. So right now we have this conversation. We're done and through. A week tomorrow, a week from today, or 6 months from now, 2 years from now, whatever, infinite time, whatever. There might be one thing that somebody says and you're like, yo, I remember this. This is, oh, okay, got it. So it's like the more you get to, that's the best part of like talking with people and learning and being in a growth mindset and like actually growing is like those things don't affect you they might not always just affect you right now, but like they might here. And this is one thing that we did talk about. Remember, I was talking about how like ideas and getting ideas and purchasing a book, right? And so it was like, it was one of the sharks. I forgot his name. I forgot his name the last time we talked about it too. But it was one of the sharks on Shark Tank. And one of his things, the best pieces of advice was like, if you buy a book and only read a chapter of it, and it gives you an idea, at any point in your life, it's already been paid for.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't know about getting this certification. Maybe I hold off on buying this particular thing for my business. Or, maybe I don't take that course in college. If you like limit yourself, even if you take that course in college and then you decide to withdraw from it halfway through the semester or during the time, when, you get a chance to do that, right?
Yeah.
Done that. And I learned things in there like, you know what? I'm not as good as this as I thought I was. That was like one huge thing that I really thought. I was like, I think it was online marketing. And here I am, learning it because it was something that I wasn't formally good at to begin with, but I learned that it was an area of opportunity for me. And that's been crucial. That shed light on so much stuff just from that. And so the point is like, you have to put yourself in situations where that gives you an opportunity to grow. If you stay,
for sure,
like anything is an opportunity to grow. And I think that is
the hardest pill to swallow is that some of the things you're banking on are just opportunities to grow, and they're going to be failures. I started a pomade company. That was the bee's knees, dude. Like I had the, black tin cans, and I had gotten my recipe down just right. And it was colored, I had this like nice pink color, and it was right before Christmas time, and I had peppermint scent. And I did my own. I don't remember the app I used on the iPad. I like drew my own logo, and it came out legit. I'm not even a good artist, but it came out. Everything was great. I spent like $1,000, or something. I spent a good bit of money at the time for what I had, and had all these cans of it. Had all this I was trying to create all this stuff on Instagram. This producer from LA posted a picture with it. I was like, this is going to be awesome. And I sold 2 cans. 2 cans. I had this idea. I'm going to give it to my military friends, because like most of my friends are in the military, and they all rock high and tight, hard parts, hair is slick back. I'm going to give them a bunch of cans, and it's going to sell itself. And, just totally, I realized that I couldn't do everything myself. I realized that you can't always be the media guy, the idea guy, the production guy, the sales guy. You learn stuff from that, and it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, because the thing you're banking on, like I still think about that with this. Like, this could all be a fluke, but it won't be a fluke. And I'll give you one more example. When we came up with Coffee Cold Brew, that was my solution to COVID-19 for us, because I don't want to depend on traffic in the store anymore, because we just started. And I'm like, well, this could happen again and again and again. We open a full-size shop. It could close. So I need something that I can sell that still is us, but that I can sell from home. And it was the cold brew. And I'm like, okay, so I get this roaster, and I didn't get like a super nice roaster. I got like a roaster anyone could afford, but it does a really small batch. And I'm like, well, I read like small batch is easier, all this stuff. I get these beans in. I had beans from Bali, and I had some from Peru, and I had some from where we settled on, the Chiapas from Mexico. And like I said, that was the original thought anyway. So I roast all these different flavors, and I like had different containers of like, this coffee, we're going to judge them. And I had ruined them all. Like, they never cracked. They looked like they were perfect, but they were like, I guess they still tasted green. Like, it was sour. Like, it would make your stomach hurt. And I was like, we needed that. Like, you need to get like your legs chopped out from under you every once in a while, because if not, you're going to go down, you're going to start moving too quick, and you're going to make mistakes, and you need that, That was a long stretch to get to that the coffee tasted sour. It was like a 10-minute story, and the coffee tasted sour.
I seriously love it. That's such a cool story to me, though, because then, like, again, like now, like, let's just even say, like, I just learned something about, I didn't even know that you had to, like, wait. Like, I guess now it makes sense that when you see coffee beans, they're cracked. And you just mentioned that, and I'm like, oh shit, like that's a part of it. That's a reality for you. Like, you hear them crack, sour.
They'll pop.
Like, yeah.
They're getting close,
Yeah. So, I mean, so just thank you for sharing that, because it's super true. And I can relate, because that's it, like, because of COVID, and you're trying to find something that, like, okay, if this closes down, then what's the deal? For me, all right, well, my gym's closed down. I just got an email from the main gym I was training people at, completely out of business. Completely out of business.
Wow.
That space is no longer available. And I'm like, damn, if I was down in the city, that would be devastating, because I had all my clients there. So now I'm like thinking, okay, well, I have to be able to have an online profile now, and I have to have online clients, and I needed this app that I'm using now, which I've been beta testing with a bunch of people. And so far, so great. And also, that gave me the same thing as you mentioned. You were like, oh, I need to get this cold brew as something to be able to send to people, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing with the product lines. In the beginning, I mentioned I want to get into products, because it's something that it's multifaceted. It honestly makes a business more legit when they have products and merchandise in general. But also, it's another way to solidify my stance as a business. Like, you have to become adaptable. You have to be able to grow and change and be okay to roll with the punches, to get your legs chopped off out from underneath you, as you so well, as you perfectly explained. And that's why I love this shit. And I think that, to me, when you mentioned the grind before, like you love the grind and the process, this is it. What we just discussed and what we talked about, this is the shit I love. Because
I romanticize. I want to be 80, like, man, that was cool. And like and it's not about me. I mean, it's really just, gosh, there's so much time, like you have no time, but you have all this time at the exact same time. I've got a tattoo that says time is relative, and I got that a long time ago, and I really got it because I thought that I was savvy and cool because I read Einstein's a book called Einstein's Dreams, and it was how he come up with theory of relativity, and it was about a bunch of dreams that were wrong about relativity, and then he figures it out. So I thought I was all cool, but now like really, like it is relative to what you do. Like time goes by when they say when you're having fun, but it's when you're being productive. So it's
when you're in alignment with what you believe in, with your value, what's important to you. Like those are all intermingled. It's just semantics, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's scary at the same time because it goes by so quickly. And I know that's a cliche to say, like you've got time goes by really fast, but it's literally both. You literally have so much time and no time all wrapped up together. And I just want to make the best use of it possible,
Yeah, man, that's all you can do. And like I said, you have an opportunity every single day. Every single day you have an opportunity to do that. And that's okay. And when we say that, like there's a lot of people that are super masculine, positive energy where they're like, oh, you have every day, make the best of it, blah, blah, blah. And so like that deters people from taking that day off, right? Or taking that like week off, or maybe that month off, right? Because that deters you. Like you get into the negative, closed-minded mindset based on a positive aspiration. It's like people create a lot of problems for themselves always. I mean, it's all internal anyway. That's the other thing too, is like your problems are only your problems. They're not because of somebody else. People act, but it's ultimately how you determine it to be, right? Your perception of your situation, of your human experience is entirely yours. Yes, people can do things to you. You can have your place evicted because of somebody, or what, you could be evicted because of this, or your shop can be closed down, or your gym can be closed down because of negligence on somebody else's part, and now you're out of this. Like there could be anything that happens because of that, right? But your perception of that situation is ultimately going to be what is the most important and really the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. I mean, it's in alignment with what you were saying before, but it's slightly off of a tangent. I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it perfectly fits, people, I don't think they grasp. Unfortunately, I know not everybody's the same. Not everyone's own their own business. But people don't grasp what's possible for them. I know, and like people want things now, and that's our society. I mean, I want things now. Everybody does, but
I want things. I want a lot of things now.
Yeah, but like I said, if everything was just there, I mean, yeah, sure, it would be nice, but what I always use the word romanticize. What's romantic about it? Like when have you ever? I'll give you a great example, and this is for if there's any girl listeners. And I literally had this conversation with my wife earlier, and it just happens to fit perfectly. There's some people, and there's people like this in everybody's life where it looks like they're getting everything together. Like they've got new furniture and new appliances or new vehicle or whatever it is. And as well as I do, that people get these things ahead of themselves a little bit. You know what I mean? Like if you have a $60,000 truck and you make $30,000 a year, you're a little bit ahead of yourself. That's the way that I see things. And what I was telling my wife is like, what's romantic about having everything from the get? I said, And I told her, when you watch The Notebook, how good would that movie have been if they were just like, we're going to get married? And you know what? They went in there and they had a all stainless steel range and a Samsung refrigerator, and the movie was over. You'd be like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. What was that movie about? But no, like they don't, and like if they never fought or whatever, no, they fight real bad and nothing goes their way and they hate each other or whatever, and the dude buys like the worst house of all time and has to work super hard to build it, and the whole, everybody knows that like the best stuff comes out of the worst. Diamonds are made under pressure and all that. But my favorite part is, even if it doesn't, you can always just live a normal life, dude.
Yeah.
You can do this for like 4 years and be like, nah, you know what? I'm going to work at AutoZone.
You always get to make that choice, right? I think that's
always there. So why not? I don't even know if those stories merged together. I just merged AutoZone and The Notebook.
That was awesome. Do that. I think that's
that.
I love it. No, I love it. Imagine.
I wouldn't publish that, but
it's so awesome. It's like this huge love story, and then imagine at the end it's just Twister is like, okay, no more. He's like, fuck that. I'm working at AutoZone, and there he is, like, scanning an oil filter.
That's what I'm saying. That actually, I would love that movie. If it's like a movie and like the guy's like building a company and grinding, and then he gets to like 40 and he's like, fuck it, let's work at AutoZone, and then it's over. I'd be like clapping.
And then I would, I think because I know I love that story, because at least he shot for something he wanted to do and then figured it out. It doesn't matter. I think that's a huge, huge thing for everybody. Shoot your shot. At least you hear, how many people do you say to do that with like a significant other? Right? Yo, shoot your shot. You never know. You never know. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you shoot your shot, yeah. Like, okay, but do you do that with like other parts of your life, or do you just say that when you're at a bar trying to pick up another person?
No, dude, everybody that says something's going to be bad, unless it's actually like something like severely illegal or bad, it never is. Everybody told me when I started dating my wife, who's from Mexico. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish. We were talking on Google Translate. She was only here for the summer. They're like, come on, dude. What are you going to do? Go to Mexico? And I was like, I think I am. And then I went there for 2-3 months and had an apartment in Mexico. And I got a whole bunch of conversations about how that was a bad idea and how,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool.
And that's like, we need to do another podcast is what we need to
that's
do.
That's a whole other, that's so cool though.
Yeah. So, but it all worked out. It was hard. It wasn't easy. And even when I came back, I'm like, well, how is this going to work? And, but the good stuff's hard to get. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I could have said whatever, and then, married the girl that works at AutoZone.
Yeah, it could have went that way, right? That's the thing, is like, you got to be okay with getting, and this is something. So I did this certification called the Strong Coach, and that's just kind of like a brand help thing, personal development, but for coaches, it's like really practical towards coaches in business for that. So I'm very super big into education, no matter what it is, based off the idea that we described earlier of like any idea is worth it, right? So I'm always investing in education, and one of the things is like leaning into the discomfort. Whenever you're feeling uncomfortable, do it anyway, unless it's illegal or dangerous, like physically dangerous. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just otherwise, do it, right?
For sure.
And so one of the things that I was like super afraid to do, and having conversations with people, was going to like an improv class. Going to an improv class, because I was so scared of like just being caught on the fly, right? Yeah. And so my coach at the time was like, yo, go to a fucking improv class. And like, I mean, that wasn't a fear of mine, but it came up in a thing where he was like, I used to be an actor before I started doing all this coaching stuff. Go to an improv class. You're going to love it. I'm like, put it off for 2 weeks. I was like, oh, maybe if I get somebody to go with me, maybe if I get somebody to go with me, then I'll go. And then that fell through. That didn't work. And then I didn't go. And then I was like, you know, fuck it. I'm going by myself. Let's go. Let's go. And I went, bro. I had the most fun Friday night in such a long time. Like, that was the coolest experience. And I would totally do it again, but I would have never even thought to do an improv class where I'm sitting here with strangers I never even knew, coming up with random stuff on the fly, trying to be what I thought was funny. And everyone else being like, okay. Yeah. Like, no reservations, like huge progress.
We definitely have to have another podcast because I've got a really, I was going to be a stand-up comedian. This is about 2 years ago, and I started doing open mics, and that first open mic, you know, like, truthfully, was the most awkward thing that I've ever done and the most fun. Like, I was so nervous. And then I got up there and I just start like telling jokes that I think are funny. And like, I won't go into it on the podcast, but, you know, I actually, it was like sickly funny for me that no one laughed. Like, that made it twice as funny for me. I don't know why, but I was like, you know, like, I'm laughing at myself while I'm doing it. But all these little things have helped so much. You know, like, I love sales. I love being funny, and I'm not scared. I am scared to talk in front of people. I'm scared to call. When I called you, every person I call that I don't know, I'm like, all right, let's, you know, bite the bullet here. All those things are tools, you know.
It's all tools that you kind of learn to get over. And I mean, even when you said, like, so we got on the call before we started recording, you're like, all right, I'm about to record. Are we good? And I'm like, yep, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. And then my next thought is like, all right, how do I start this? You know?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know how to like bridge the gap into this, or bridge the gap into like how Rogan. I like how they like randomly go live. They've already been talking.
Oh yeah.
That's got to be well established though, because it wouldn't make any sense. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think he like.
Audio version isn't like that so much as the video version has, but that's a cool concept. That feels really natural. And just like they're already talking, where you almost like, what did I miss right before that started? You know?
Yeah, there's some conversations where that's definitely happened. I also feel like, I mean, just if we're talking background stuff, like I think, you know, they probably like record the intro and the piece or something like that, and then they're like, all right, let's go. You know?
Yeah, and if you notice, he records his whole intro to the audio version after the podcast.
Yes.
Then it gives them good insight on what's about to happen. It's pretty clever. That's why he's getting a $100 million deal from Spotify for 3 years.
I know. That's a crazy thing that he's doing. I love it. Podcasts are so cool. So cool.
So cool. I just remember thinking that they sucked.
Really?
I remember that. At one point, it was like, who listens to that? Because I didn't like radio. Thought radio was outdated. And then I heard one podcast, and it wasn't his. It was, I probably did see some clips of his first, but I didn't listen to a whole podcast. It was Ben Greenfield. Well, it was on his. You need to check him out.
I'll check him out.
I definitely think we need to set up another time to like, we could just make this part 1 and add a part 2.
Yeah, I think so too. That would be awesome.
Like, we'll name this
part 1
something, and you know, part 1 like something. It won't be. I just put it part 1 something. Yeah, and then
random things here.
Follow up, because there's a lot to talk about.
From mindset to AutoZone, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, the path to AutoZone. Yeah.
Path to AutoZone. Oh man, that's such like a random title.
No one would listen to it.
Nobody would be like Ryan Miller, owner of Blackbird Athletics, Coffee Cold Brew, AutoZone. What? Yeah. The algorithm for anything is going to be like, we don't even know.
It might pop off. Like, did we just like sync the algorithm completely? Just,
just
down it.
crash through. We don't even know what to do with this.
If we wanted views, we'd just say Joe Rogan. But we won't do that. I don't snatch views like that.
I mean, regardless of like the content, I think that's what I was talking about this with Tony. I mean, I talk about to him all the time. He's like one of my best friends. And we were talking about this, is like the best part is that there's no topic. It's like you can't put his show into any particular.
Yeah, we talked about that. He basically said,
we did also talk about that. That's right.
He basically said, your niche is now my niche for this 3-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell when they talk about what he knows about. You can tell.
You could tell. And then when he's sitting back and learning, and then he's just, that's like a perfect example of communication, human communication, because there's opportunities for him to share his knowledge, to spread his knowledge, to share common ground, to learn new things, to get in uncomfortable conversations, to just sit back and just ask questions and have somebody explain something to him that he has no idea what's about. I think that's like probably like an overlooked thing as to why he's so successful. And I mean, we're talking about him on your podcast right now. Like, that's just a testament to him, but also because I think there's things.
It's like Michael Jordan of basketball or Tiger. I mean, he's just the dude for this.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
But yeah, man, this has been super fun. I don't know how. I think we're going close to 2 hours.
Yeah, we're getting close. Yeah, holy crap, man.
Yeah, I looked back a little bit ago. I was like, I was thinking like an hour in my head, and I was like, we've probably talked for about half an hour, and we'll probably bridge it back into fitness. And then I looked down, and we had been talking for an hour already. I was like, well, I said, and then I thought, well, we won't even bridge the gap into fitness because we don't want it to be too long, and then we just burned another hour.
No, that's awesome, man. Yo, we literally just did like about 2 hours. That's crazy.
Yeah, there was sunlight in your window.
Oh yeah, there's no more sunlight. Yeah.
Man, it's been a real pleasure, dude, and we need to definitely jump on another one whenever you're available, and we can, talk actually about fitness.
Yeah, we can talk about fitness, talk about whatever. I love learning about coffee. It's a huge. I love coffee myself. So like I love hearing about this. Love talking to people. Love talking business with people. But yeah, man, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure was all mine.
Word. See you. Thank you.
See you, man.